It's June 20th. It's about 10 o'clock. I'm supposed to go to Cars and Coffee today, but it's also raining. Um, I started working on active Autowerke Stage 2 Supercharger on the E36. I've gotten not very far. I've got some of the emissions lines done, vacuum hoses done, and I got the supercharger mounted. I don't want to complain. But before I do that, I think I'll be a little more helpful before I start ranting. Alright, there's the car. Got my delicious cup of coffee here. Thanks, Mr. Hoffman. A couple of my friends are asking me why I spend so much time working on the emissions and the vacuum line stuff. It does matter because when you're putting boost in the manifolds, you're putting boost to stuff that really shouldn't be seeing boost. So one of the first steps in the instructions was to take this breather hose that normally goes down there. You can't really see to the PCB. Take the breather hose off, and then take the other side of the breather hose off where it goes to the PCB, and you can see where it's plugged on the inlet. So this is your crankcase vent, and it just relieves any oil or whatever that blows past the piston into the crankcase and into the valve cover essentially, and it just sends it back to the PCB where it separates oil and air. The air goes back to the manifold, and the oil goes back to the oil pan. None of that stuff should see boost, so we have to reroute everything. So the way the new system works is you have your new attachment here. It'll tee off. There'll be a small vacuum line there, and you'll have your big line here. The bigger line has a filter in the middle that will act as essentially your oil separator. They haven't really said anything about replacements on that, so I'm not sure if I'm totally correct on how it works, but that's how I assume it works. You just have that fuel filter there that'll separate the oil, and then it continues on, and that end will actually tie into your intake hose, which will sit right there. So you'll be sending air back into the intake, and it should be much safer than sending it to the PCB. That little vacuum line will tee off, and it'll go around and back towards the charcoal canister purge valve, which I don't even know if you can see where it tees in right there. And that should be mostly oil, if I'm not mistaken. And that should head back to the manifold. I will say, getting the PCB valve off wasn't as bad as everybody says if you have small hands like I do. Alright, the next step that was in the instructions was to basically splice into the fuel pressure regulator vacuum line. And this was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do so far, just because you can't see what you're doing. The vacuum connection that I've made is like down there. I don't even know if you can see it. There's like a T with 3 vacuum lines. I don't know. Yeah, right there. And it comes at the bottom of the intake manifold, and normally it goes straight to the pressure regulator, but you need a vacuum source for your blow-off valve. So you had to splice into that, and you can't see the nipple at all. So you're just working blind, and it is just a massive pain in the ass. I think me and a buddy took like an hour just to get that line on there. But you can see that the blow-off valve line is here, waiting for me to install the blow-off valve. The last step for the emissions lines was to take the charcoal canister purge valve, which used to sit right there for me, and basically relocate it with an extension and a check valve back behind the throttle body. So you can see it there with a little clip on top, and then on the bottom there's a connection you have to make. That's where the new check valve that they provide goes. There's that T, and then farther down is the check valve. It looks tight back there, but you can disconnect everything and do it up here while you have space, and then just push it back there. They recommend bolting it to the brake master cylinder bolt. The hole was too small for me. I don't know what was going on there, so I ended up just zip tying it to the bracket, and it's not really going anywhere. The other video I've seen just had the guy letting it float out there in space, so I assume this is fine. Once all those lines are done, you can start working on the fun stuff, which would be the supercharger. And we got it mounted yesterday in a couple hours. It really wasn't that bad. It is pretty tight. Definitely you have to get the fan out. If you're doing a cooling system refresh, this would be a good time to do it too, because that hose won't be there, the radiator won't be there. You'll have a lot of room. But I left my radiator in and the fan shard in and the hose, and we could still do it. It wasn't that bad. The first thing they want you to do is obviously take the fan out, take the belts off, and then down there's your old tensioner somewhere. I don't know if you can see it with this darkness. Take that out. It's 3 bolts. They were kind of hard to see. One of them was blind. But you take the tensioner out and the shock out, and then you reuse the 1 bolt for the new tensioner, and you can bolt that in. That's not too bad. The brackets, you take the top alternator bolt out there, where it's exposed right there. It's that bolt that comes out. You actually take the bolt off anyway, because I think that the old idler pulley's on there. So that comes out, and then the power steering pump top bolt there, I think, comes out, and you need to replace that with a button head bolt, which they provide. And then the other side of the top of the power steering top bolt comes out, and that's the bottom part of your bracket. So right now the bracket is just holding with 2 bolts. There'll be 1 more bracket back there. You can see the little tab waiting for the adjustable bracket. That will go and sit there when the hoses are installed. And then you put your idlers on, which are, again, really easy. Make sure that the spacer in the back is oriented the right way, which they're pretty clear about in the instructions. And then the supercharger goes on with 4 bolts. And that's about all we've done so far. It took me a while because I'm mechanically inept, but I'm sure most people will be able to figure it out. And if you have any questions, please just ask. I'm happy to answer. Well, I hope that helps a little bit, but I still gotta complain. This kit was really expensive. Like, the car cost me about $72, and the kit cost me about $7. This is not a cheap kit, and it is nice in that it has everything you need. It's a complete kit. But after last night, I'm so pissed. I wish I had just gotten an RMS kit. The CCV system is disappointing. I thought it would be like a catch can or something quality. Just having a fuel filter in the line and sending it back to the intake. Maybe I probably don't know much about how to make a good system, I guess, but that seems janky. Just the potential of putting oil back into the intake is just so high, and I don't know if that fuel filter is going to be good enough to clean it. And then last night we were putting the supercharger on, and 2 of the 4 mounting bolts for the supercharger stripped. Like, the supercharger casing stripped, not the bolts, but the casing itself. The most expensive part of the kit was just wrecked before we even got to this torque value. It is so disappointing that the casting, I don't know if it was the casting quality or what, but we were being very gentle. It's 8 foot-pounds on the bolts, so really not much at all, but before we even got to 8 foot-pounds, the bolt just let go and started spinning in place. I still have shavings here, if you can even see. I don't even know if you can. I'll try. If it'll focus, but I mean, you can see those shavings, like that came from the inside of the supercharger, and it's just, yeah, I don't know. I haven't talked to Active Autowerke yet. Oh, my phone, but I'll call them on Monday or email them. They've been ignoring my emails too. That's the other thing. Their customer service has been pretty bad so far. I think I've emailed them twice. I emailed the customer rep directly. I tried using the email in the instructions and it was undeliverable. I tried emailing them directly using the email on their site, and it was undeliverable. So I used the form on their site, and I haven't gotten a response back for some other unrelated questions. Um, I mean, I guess I need to call them, I guess, and see what they say if they'll even answer the phone. I even DM'd them on Instagram, and they haven't said anything still, but that was just last night, so it might be early. Um, yeah, this is a very expensive kit, and the whole experience has been a little frustrating. And then the last thing I want to complain about are the instructions. Oh my god, the instructions are so bad. Like, this is something I would have written if I was in junior high on Word from like 2004. Um, and I don't know, like I write essentially maintenance repair instructions for a living, so maybe my standard is higher. I don't know, but having a blurry picture from 2007 and a 5 word blurb next to it is just not good for a $7,000 kit. Um, if you go to Turner Motorsports or whatever and look up any of their instructions for any of their custom parts, they're great. They're like super detailed. They give you the whys, the hows, the tools you need. You can look on the Active Autowerke site and look at their instructions, and it's just like honestly pathetic compared to most other places. But it's still early. I'm gonna keep trying to contact them. I don't know if I'll post more videos about the install, and there aren't that many um, on installing this kit. I've only seen one, and it was again after the fact. It was this guy with the Z3M that put it on, which was pretty cool. It seemed to be working well for him. Hopefully, I can get mine to work just as well. But I'll try and post more videos on the install process to hopefully help y'all out there. But I need to talk to Active Autowerke first. But anyway, soapbox over with. If you have any questions about the install so far, let me know. I'm trying to make it clear and professional, but I can only do so much. Anyway, thanks for watching.